Hi there, I hope that you are enjoying embodying the MELT practice and the 4Rs protocol. Now, just to review the 4Rs of MELT: reconnect, rebalance, rehydrate, and release. Reconnect techniques, remember, are assessment techniques so that you can identify where stuck stress is living in your body before it causes you chronic pain symptoms. And one of the primary reconnect techniques that you've learned is the rest assess. Remember, no matter how good you get at doing the MELT treatments, especially when you do start using the actual products, you'll always spend time assessing, whether you do the rest assess or a rib length assess or some other movement assessment that you will learn as you embody the practice. But really, one of the most profound things to do is to just give yourself permission to go into your body and sense what you feel with the rest assess. So remember, no matter how good you get at doing it, you'll always assess at the beginning and reassess to not only value the changes, but to help your autopilot reconnect to your center of gravity. Now, there's also other reconnect techniques that you've learned when you did the rebalance sequence. Move things like doing the gentle rocking, the tuck and tilt. When we were doing the lower body length sequences, we tried a modified tuck and tilt and the tuck and tilt challenge. All ways to help your autopilot reacquire its connection to your center of gravity. That is really critical throughout our aging process, as most people don't realize from all of the repetitive movements and postures that we take from day to day. Our autopilot loses its connection to our center of gravity, and it is one of the primary reasons so many people have low back pain. So being able to reacquire that subtle differentiated motion that you learned by moving your pelvis is going to be an integral part of keeping your back pain-free for years to come. And we also learned the rebalance sequence, where we added 4 moves together: gentle rocking, the tuck and tilt, the 3D breath breakdown, and the 3D breath. Those 2 rebalancing techniques, 3D breath breakdown and 3D breath, are again integral elements of really helping your autopilot reacquire its neurological efficiency. I've mentioned the neurocore. This is a dual neuromyofascial channel of reflexes and neurological mechanisms that have an inherent link to every aspect of stability that you can think of. Not just your postural stability. I'm talking about emotional, chemical, physiological, neurological. Every aspect of your body really relies upon connective tissue in the nervous system to function efficiently so that we have stability and balance. The channel that the body uses is the neurocore. And one of the primary autonomic functions in our body that is completely involuntarily, and we do it all day long, that we can consciously take over is breathing. Can't digest your food faster, can't make yourself go to the bathroom whenever you feel like it, but you can definitely take over the autonomic response of breathing. And as you do, profound changes can happen. It becomes an interruption in neurological inefficiency, just focusing on 3 directions of breath and feeling and sensing your body expand in direction. If you found that you've practiced it on your own and you find that your mind wanders, that's part of the mindful meditation practice of MELT, that as you focus on breathing and you take over the autonomic functions of inhalation, your mind might wander into a million thoughts. Invite the thoughts to come in, say thank you, and then come back to focusing on your breath. Every time you do it, profound changes begin to occur in your body. Then we also had another rebalance technique called the 3D breath. This is a way to activate consciously the core reflex. Now, I've mentioned this. Every time we exhale, the core reflex actually activates every single time we breathe in and out. It's just so subtle we don't feel it. But if you draw your attention to that cylindrical engagement in the deep abdomen, it can actually supercharge that reflex and get it back into activity. If you've had an abdominal surgery or you're suffering with chronic low back pain, your core reflex has been inhibited or out of balance for a long time. So as you continue to do these treatments, no matter how good you get at MELT, the rebalance sequence is always one to come back to time and again to check into that neurocore reflex. And we also began learning some rehydrate techniques, and we focused on lengthening techniques because you're still using a towel. One of the other concepts of hydrating fascia is through compression, we can rehydrate the tissue. If you think of fascia, remember, kind of like a sponge, daily living causes our sponge to get a little bit stiff. And if you never do anything about it, if you think of the fluid in fascia like a river, daily living is kind of laying down sediment in your river's flow. And where that sediment fat loves to accumulate is around your joints. So we've acquired some of the two-directional lengthening techniques like hip to heel press, rotate and cross. We did the bent knee press, and I even gave you another assessment technique called rib length assess, which is also an actual lengthening technique that's tremendously profound when you do start using the roller. But there's also compression techniques of melt called gliding, shearing, and rinsing. Now, if you've tried self-myofascial release, and if you type it into Google, you'll see a lot of smart people telling you to iron yourself like a shirt in random positions. And when you find a lumpy area, you're going to land on it and dig it out like you'll win an award for inflicting pain. But here's the thing. If you're suffering with chronic pain, or what you want to do is improve neurological timing and stability, chasing your pain or digging out areas that are really tender isn't the way to go. If what you want to do is restore neurological balance, don't cause pain to get out of pain. It doesn't even make any sense, right? So we want to hydrate the tissue through gentle compression and work the fluid into a sponge. Remember, just like a sponge, we don't just slap water on a sponge, we kind of work at it. We kind of knead the sponge, and then what do we do before we use that sponge? Once it has fluid in it, we squeeze it out, wait for a moment, let it go, so then when we use it, it can actually absorb. And just like a moist sponge absorbs water faster than a dried out one, this is what's going to start happening to your fascial system. A lot of us, when we're in a state of dehydration in tissue, drinking more water is not the answer. In fact, it will actually just make you go to the bathroom more. But as you start to melt, your body will utilize that fluid. It will transport nutrients and fluids and junk dump the toxins and waste out of your body more efficiently. The compression techniques are really profound. Now, unfortunately, doing compression techniques using a towel is just too soft. It does not make the impact. But when you do start using the roller, you will make some tremendous changes. But today what I wanted to do is introduce you to the concepts of gliding, shearing, and rinsing so that you have this in the back of your mind, that when you go to practice the treatments and you dive into Melt on Demand, you'll be able to add these techniques very quickly and you'll already have the language in your mind. So one of the techniques that we have in Melt is the hand treatment. And I want you to just understand the difference between gliding, shearing, and rinsing, and it's an easy way to learn it on your hands. So first, take your palms and just interlace your fingers and place the heels of your hands together. And all I want you to do is just begin to gently rub your hands together back and forth. And what I want you to get a sense of is that you're compressing your skin and you're just massaging skin over skin. That's called gliding. Let's also try gliding on your forearm. If I were to rub your skin back and forth, that's gliding. And that's what we're going to be doing with the roller in any compression technique, because it's gliding to prepare. That's going over the surface area. Gliding is your way to prepare your connective tissue. It's a way to explore your body for areas of restriction, any areas that feel sensitive or tender, but it also gives your nervous system and the free nerve endings in the superficial tissue time to adapt to compression. So you'll never see me telling you to press your body into the roller as you go through treatments. We always want to ease compression in, glide, prepare those free nerve endings and the superficial tissues for the more effective and focal techniques called shearing. So remember, if you're gliding the ball or the roller over your skin, that's gliding. That's just preparing the tissue. But now what I want you to do is pin your thumb tissue together and just drag your hands forward and back. And what I want you to notice is I'm not rubbing my thumbs up against one another. I'm pinning the skin and I'm creating a shear effect. Right? We can also learn how to do that on our forearms. I can grab my forearm and pin the skin and drag it on the underlying plane, either by twisting and rolling or creating a dragging action. I can also create an indirect shear. If you pin the skin, kind of pinch your forearm, and then make fists, you can feel how the muscles underneath your hand are contracting and releasing. That's called an indirect shear. That's a way to actually use your muscles and the contraction of muscles to create friction once you have an active area of compression. So as you start to learn how to use the roller, you'll learn to compress and glide, and then compress and do direct shearing, again, pinning the skin and rolling it on the underlying plane, going from skin to bone, or pinning the skin and contracting muscles to yield fluid flow from bone to skin. Very profound techniques. The secret of doing shearing is once you've done a shear effect, compress and wait. Remember the idea of the sponge. We work the fluid into the sponge, we compress and wait for a moment, so when we let it go, now we get the fill effect in the regions that we're compressing. Gliding and shearing are local fluid exchange techniques. It's a way to pool fluid into local regions, and then you'll learn to rinse. Rinsing, we follow myofascial meridians. So on the hands, you'll be working down the fingers and up the palm and the forearms. On your legs, we're going to be working up the inside of the leg, down the back side of the leg, up the front of the thighs, and down the side of the thighs to follow that natural fluid flow and to create the cyclical motion in fascia. Fascia, again, is a constant state of fluid flow. It's when those areas of sedimentation collect that the fluid's got to divert, and as it does, it decreases sensory motor control. What do I mean by that? Muscles can become inhibited to contract if fascia becomes too stiff. It actually blocks or inhibits that neural transmission that is so important to keep our joints stable. So another region we could practice that on is on our shins. We could glide the front of our shins with our fingers. We could then pin the skin and drag the tissue back and forth. We could also pin the skin and flex and point our ankle to do shearing. And then we can just compress and wait. And then if we were going to rinse, we would work down the outside and up the front. Down the outside and up the front. Now, of course, we can shear all areas of our body with our own hands, and I think it's a wonderful thing to encourage you guys to compress and explore your tissue. You'll start to realize that fascia is in different thicknesses depending upon where in your body you're at. It does not distribute itself cohesively and evenly in our bodies, but ideally the hydration is, especially under the superficial fascia that attaches to our skin. So even though we don't have the roller to be able to create proper compression, today we're going to add a little bit of compression using our hands on the lower body, and we're just going to do an extra technique. One of my favorites is called the Drawbridge. It's a wonderful way to restore some of the hydration clear up into your torso. So this is just a basic lower body treatment. Let's go ahead and give it a try. You're going to need your towel rolled up. This is all we'll be using today. So if you're ready, go ahead and lie on your back with your palms faced up and your arms and legs extended, and let's add a little bit of compression to a lower body length sequence. Okay, so set your rolled up towel aside, and we're going to lie on our back, palms up, arms and legs extended. Give yourself permission, go into your body and sense what you feel, and just take a few focused breaths in and out, just noticing the rise and fall of the torso through your breath. Use your body sense, scan your masses and spaces. In your upper body, notice your head, arm, and torso position. If your head feels off-centered, or if you're noticing one arm is more weighted to the ground than the other, or you're noticing most or all of your back weight is on your shoulder blades, you've identified stuck stress in the shoulder girdle. Turning your head left and right, remember that'll help us to identify if accumulative stress is actually limiting the range and stability of our cervical spine. So if you feel limited range, pain, or your shoulders follow your head turn, again, another way to identify accumulative stress living in the upper body. Take another breath in. Notice the tension and lift in the mid-back. Remember, we want the curve to feel like it's lower than the navel rather than tight and tense up above. And in our pelvis, if our neural core is out of balance, we're going to feel like we're lying more on our tailbone than two evenly weighted butt cheeks. The back of the thigh masses may feel more like spaces off the ground. And our leg angle might be completely different from left to right. If we have a lot of accumulative stress in the pelvis, you might notice that your toes are very pointed away from your ankles or out to the sides of the room. Your legs feel just in completely different directions. And then our autopilot. Divide yourself into a left and a right half. Notice if you feel balanced from left to right, or if your autopilot is having interference from the connective tissue dehydration that you feel in your body. Try to remember what you feel. When you're ready, go ahead and bend your knees. We're going to take the roller, we're going to lift up our hips and bring that towel underneath the back of our pelvis. Now again, we don't have the proper tools to really do a lot of compression, but we can do a little bit today. I want you to bring your knees up and just allow your knees to sort of fall into your body for a moment and just feel that nice length in your low back. Then if you bring your knees slightly away from your body and you just slightly tip your knees a little bit left to right. If you don't let your knees tip too far, what you're doing is basically rolling over what's called the sacroiliac joint. And even with a towel and not the roller with that focal curve of it, we can still make a little bit of hydration change at the sacroiliac joint. So all I want you to do is just tip your knees over to the right side. Find your core, use your arms to relax your upper body, and just create some small circles on a slight angle with both of your legs. So this is a direct shear, pinning the actual joint and creating circular motions will create a little bit of hydration change to the SI joint. You can also keep your left leg still, and you can circle just the right leg. So this would be considered an indirect shear. I'm moving my hip joint, but that's creating hydration changes to my back body, to my sacroiliac joint. Now the third way you can do this shear is to bring your legs together and very slowly march your legs slowly forward and backward. Nice and slow with those legs staying slightly on that angle. One more time. And then we'll just bring our legs back to center, pause there for a moment, just take a nice focused breath. Remember, work the fluid into the sponge, compress and wait. And then tip your knees slightly over to the left side. So just slightly off from center, same thing, creating small circles. Now notice as you're trying to coordinate that subtle movement with your pelvis, if your ribs are coming with you, right? I want the ribs to stay quiet. Even think of these types of movements as differentiation. And you'll learn a lot more about that as you start to explore the app with all of the treatments that have compression in it. Now you could also keep your right leg still and you could circle the left leg. Notice if you're feeling any clicking, popping, snapping, thunking, crunching, any audible sounds in your hip, that's your cue to make the movement smaller and slow down. Again, you could also bring your legs back together and just very subtly march your legs a little forward and backward. Forward and backward. And then you're going to just nice and slowly bring your legs back together. Pause there for a moment with your legs slightly on the angle. And then bring your legs back to center. So starting with a tuck and tilt challenge. Now that you know how to do a modified one, let's practice this tuck and tilt challenge right off the bat. Press your thighs into your hands and subtly tuck your pelvis, pubic bone curls towards your nose, and tilt your pelvis, landing your pelvis back to the top of the roller. So we're going to use this as an assessment, tucking and then tilting, right? Can you keep your ribs quiet? Can you keep your thighs pressing into your hands as you tuck and tilt? One more time, just evaluate. What does it feel like to tuck? And what does it feel like to tilt? Now go ahead and set your right foot down to the ground. And I just want you to take your left foot and just drop it onto your right knee for a moment. And I want you to take your own hands, grab onto your flesh, and just twist the flesh back and forth. So this is a shear, right? I'm not rubbing my hands up against my thigh. Instead, I'm twisting the flesh to create a little bit of extra fluid exchange, right? Really grabbing and twisting my skin all the way down to my knee. And then I'm going to do it again. Starting down below, I'm going to twist. All the way down to my knee. Okay, let's try that on the other side. Same thing. Cross your ankle, just put your heel onto your thigh, and same thing. It doesn't matter where you start at first, just get the hang of the twist. Right? So again, I'm not rubbing my hands up against my thigh. I'm just pinning the skin and twisting it. And then again, start down low near your hips. Go ahead and give that hip a little opener. All the way down to your knee. And then we're going to try it again, starting up top, twisting. All the way down to the knee. Okay, so set that leg on down. Let's go ahead and try our hip to heel press, rotate, and cross. Let's start with the left leg today. So leg straightens out on that left side. Right foot is light on the floor. We're going to bring our leg up. Keep your waistline the same on both sides. Flex your foot. Tilt your pelvis actively on the roller, and let's go right into hip to heel rotate, internally and externally rotating the leg. Notice if your knee bends or if you're moving from your pelvis. This is a hip joint motion. One more time. Externally rotate the leg, flex your foot, bring the leg across the midline, and now really think pinky toe drives itself towards your knee, back of your hip sinks to the roller. Get a nice good fascial pull all the way down the leg. And then bring the leg back to center and set it down. Let's try that same thing on the other side. Low and long, right? So again, feet are light on the ground, pelvis heavy on the roller, leg comes on up. Again, before our knee wants to bend or we get to perpendicular, we flex the foot, tilt the pelvis, and now go into hip to heel rotate. 3 or 4 times. We just rotate out and then back to the center. Again, pelvis isn't moving, waistline stays the same. One more time, externally rotate. And now bring the leg across the midline. Pinky toe drives to the knee, knee toward the hip. So again, 2 directions in length, heel up, hip heavy. And then let that go. Bend your knee, tuck your pelvis, bring the knee into the chest. Remember, bent knee press, tuck the pelvis, energize your left knee over your toes as you actively tuck your pelvis towards your nose. Inhale, ease back some tension. Exhale, same thing. Energize that left knee over your toes. Same thing on the other side. Right foot comes down. Remember, imprint the foot to the floor, tuck your pelvis, energize your right knee over your toes as you accentuate the tuck of your pelvis by drawing your knee towards your shoulder. Inhale, ease back some pressure. And then one more time. Energize your knee over your toes. I want to add a move called the Drawbridge. I love this one. Keep your hands over your shin or behind the back of your thigh on that left side. Take your right leg up in the air, and right away I want you to think, anchor your ribs, pelvis is in a tuck. This left leg is going to anchor us there. Nice and slow, we're going to bring this leg on down, and once we get just shy of parallel to the floor, I want you to pause here. Now watch me. I don't want the leg to drop, right? That would mean that I'm tilting my pelvis. I want my pelvis to remain in a tuck. Really think about how the weight of your pelvis is on your side of the roller. Take your left arm overhead. I want you to pause here, lift your head, look to the left, and now reach your right fingers and your right toes away from one another. Get as long as you can. Take a breath in. And then on the exhale, try to tuck your pelvis and keep the reach of your arms and legs. Stay here. Take a breath in. Exhale. And then let it go. Let that body recoil and get the fill effect. This is going to really release our low back. Same thing on the other side. Left leg comes up, interlace your hands either over the front of your shin or behind the back of that right thigh. Again, leg is going to come on down. And again, we want to stop before the pelvis wants to lose the tuck. So again, check. Can you tuck your pelvis? Really reach that left leg out of the socket while we tuck our pelvis in opposition. Then again, left arm's going to come overhead. Notice that I don't let it drop down to the floor, kind of stays above the level of my head. I'm going to lift my head, look to the right, reach my fingers away from my toes, take a breath in. On the exhale, we're going to tuck, 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 tuck. We're going to sink the back of the ribs. We're going to stay there. Really reach that leg long. Take a breath in. Exhale. And then let it go. Now with that added hydration, now let's see if we can tuck and tilt a little better and also release our low back with that hydration. Press your thighs into your hands. Gently tuck your pelvis. Take a breath in. Keep your ribs there and then tilt. Notice if that's a little easier now. Trying it again. Tucking. And tilting. 2 more. Exhale, tucking. Sip of air. Untuck. Back to the tilt. 1 more time. Exhale and tuck. And then sip of air and tilt. Now keep your tilt. Pelvis is on the top of the roller. Take a breath in on an exhale. Make your SH, SE, or HA sound. Press your thighs to your hands. Pelvis goes to the top of the roller. Ribs are nice and anchored to the ground. Traction the spine from the front body. Inhale, ease back that tension. And one more time. 3 points of compression. Make your SH, SE, or HA sound. Shh. And then let that go. All right, let's take the roll out from underneath the back of the pelvis. Let's lie flat on our back, palms faced up, arms and legs extended. Now again, we added a couple of the techniques here, a little bit of a different order. Key into what you are feeling in your low back. Remember, if we really decompress the low back, you'll know it. Your mid-ribs will feel much more relaxed, and the lift of the low back will almost feel more lifted, only closer to the pelvis. If you found that, great job. You've hydrated your low back enough to get a full low back decompress. If your pelvis feels more butt cheeks rather than tailbone, or the back of the thighs are to the ground, again, we're taking the neural core into better regulation and balance. That's going to give you more stability when you stand up. Even your upper body, notice if your upper body masses are more relaxed, maybe turn your head left and right. Notice if you freed up any range or decreased pain for you to freely turn your head. And then, of course, our autopilot, dividing yourself into a left and a right half. Do you feel more balanced from left to right? Again, if you're feeling that balance, good indication that our autopilot has a better, more controlled connection to the center of gravity. Bend your knees, roll yourself on your side, and come on up to sitting. So you can see how just adding a couple of subtle techniques might actually make all the difference in the world. So go ahead and practice this treatment again, and when you're ready, we're going to put everything that I've taught you together into one final whole body treatment to get you started. Remember, you can do these treatments every day. You could go back to the first one. They're always great treatments to do, but once you've done this, hopefully you're willing to gain the products and put the products into your life, and I have so much more I can show you, but be prepared for tomorrow. We're going to go ahead and hydrate your entire body and do a rebalance sequence. Happy melting.